last two videos, I've been telling you they're moving quickly and to silence me. That's why we're here again today. In the last 48 hours, Hilliard on the Wiggins case is moving for a judgment with the appeals court. The DRA, remember? Forged tax returns. There is no question. They've been putting this off for years because they know that I've been leveraged by them. And leveraged by not telling you what's going on. Well, they gave a summary judgment yesterday right here. Anderson, McHugh's replacement. The guy who's covering up the cover-up again. Now you tell me the possibility of that happening within 24 hours. Now I'm here for depositions. 2 depositions in a day. In the last 8 years, you know how many times we've had 2 in a day? Never. Never mind the fact that we're right here in the basement. So again, this is a move to cover up. And for me not to tell you of the criminality in this court. Anderson didn't look at the case. He knows what he's doing. He's doing the job McHugh did. So please understand what this means. This is the corruption throughout your courts and who they represent, the largest law firms who just happen to be your politicians too. This system is completely, not only corrupt, connected throughout.
I'm going to swear the witness in now, Linda. This is Elaine, the court reporter.
I'm sorry?
This is Elaine, the court reporter, and I'm going to swear the witness in.
Okay.
Thank you. Can you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear the testimony that you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
My name is Mike Gill. I'm acting as representing myself.
And for the record, this is Attorney Brian Barrington for the Corporation of the Mortgage Specialists, Inc.
Okay, you ready, Mr. Pike?
I am.
Let me
Okay.
just say one thing. So, in accordance with Superior Court rules, no objections are necessary as to form and substance or relevancy without having to be spoken. The deponee will have the ability to read and sign after the deposition, and any objections as to form or relevancy can always be raised at time of trial. Those are standard stipulations, so that we don't have to object to every question. And the deponee generally has to answer questions unless they're protected by privilege. Which really brings up the first issue, is that Neil Pike used to be counsel for the Mortgage Specialists, Inc. Privilege is held by the client. So for the record, the Mortgage Specialists, Inc. Waives attorney-client confidence for the purpose of this deposition. I don't know if he's ever...
As myself, Michael Gill will also waive attorney-client privilege.
Okay, you can go
So
ahead.
you can speak freely, Mr. Pike. When did you start working for us, Mr. Pike?
I don't recall the exact date, but it was in September of 2013.
Where did you hear about the job?
I
Or
saw
how do you hear about it?
I saw a job posting on, I believe it was LinkedIn or Glassdoor. I'm not sure exactly which service.
Who'd you speak to at Mortgage Specialist first?
I believe it was Carrie Lemieux.
Okay. What would you consider to be your expertise in being an attorney?
In the state of New Hampshire, we don't have an expertise.
Well, if you were putting something, a job title, on a resume, what would you highlight?
Attorney.
Attorney?
Yes, sir.
That's it.
Yes.
So your background isn't taxes?
Many of the courses I took in law school related to taxes.
So would you call yourself a tax attorney?
I would not.
You're certain of that?
Today, I would not call myself a tax attorney.
Well, I mean yesterday and all the days prior to that. Would you have called yourself a tax attorney at any time?
Yes.
Well, you just said you wasn't a tax attorney and that you didn't have a label. So now you are a tax attorney.
No.
Would you bill yourself out as a tax attorney?
I have in the past put tax attorney as a label on a resume when it is a tax-related position. Yes.
So you're saying capsulated, let me get this right, that you're applying for a job that requires legal tax experience.
Currently, no, I'm not.
Wait a minute. You just said previously you have offered yourself out as a tax attorney in applying for a job.
Yes, I believe I did.
You did. So you are a tax attorney. Or were you lying on the resume?
It is my practice to try to sculpt a resume to a specific posting.
Well, if the posting said malpractice attorney, would you apply for that and call yourself a malpractice attorney?
No, I would not.
Oh. Why?
I have very little experience with malpractice.
So you have experience, a lot of experience with taxes.
I had a lot of education in taxation.
And in fact, you applied for the job and gave Mortgage Specialist your resume. Now we'll put this as an exhibit 1. Could you look at that?
All right, stop, let her label it.
Resume.
Okay.
Is that what
Yes.
I'm asking?
All right, I'll let you mark it.
She listens to letters, she doesn't necessarily listen to words when you're being a stenographer.
I couldn't hear you.
When you're a stenographer, you're listening to letters, not really meaning them. So it's-
Okay, Neil,
Okay, hold on. Okay.
is that your resume?
It looks like an electronic copy of a resume I submitted, yes.
So it is your resume. So it is your resume.
It looks as if it's an electronic copy of my resume that I submitted.
Is
Yes.
there anything on that resume that is incorrect?
I no longer currently live at Fayetteville, Arkansas.
You know, but you did once live there, right?
I did.
So that's correct. It isn't a lucky guess. That is all your information. Isn't that correct?
I'm not clear what you mean by all my information.
On your resume, everything on that resume pertains to you. Is that, 1, your resume, and you agree with what's on it? Very simple question.
Give them a chance. You're now 2 questions ahead of them, so you have to give them a chance to read it and respond.
You're representing me.
I'm here also as an officer of the court.
You're representing my company.
I'm here as an officer of the court.
Yeah.
I know you hate that phrase, but
of the information from Neil M. Pike and my address in the header until the bottom of the page, not including the footer, is accurate.
He is accurate. Could you mark the second page that's attached to that? Did you note, I'll give you a second.
Well, it says one of two, so
Okay.
that'd be included.
Attached.
Why don't you look at this?
Yeah, why don't you look at that too? Is that also correct? It's only a couple of sentences.
None of the information on page 2 was a part of my resume.
Okay. On the bottom of page 2, could you read that one sentence?
The asterisk sentence?
Yes, please.
You may download a Word document of this resume from the tax attorney, Summersworth, close paren folder, period.
Okay. What position did you apply for and said what you were on your resume?
The position I applied for,
Well, wait a minute now. Let's take a look at this. It says job title, right? Do you see where it says job title?
I do.
And we agree that this is your resume.
We agree that the information from Neil M. Pike and my address in the header until the end of the page, not including the footer, is my resume.
Good. Now, what does your job, so you applied for a job at Mortgage Specialist, gave Mortgage Specialist this resume, which you agree is your information. Now, on job title, would you read what it says that you are?
The job title
Okay. Yes.
for which I applied is tax attorney.
Thank you. So we hired you as a tax attorney.
That things to stay with her.
We hired you as a tax attorney, is that correct?
I was hired for a position with a mortgage specialist. The position, job title was tax attorney.
Okay, so the answer to that question is yes.
I can't accurately
Say
explain
yes.
why you hired me and what position I was meant for.
Well, let me bring you back to the resume. It said your job title is a tax attorney. See, obviously, I needed a tax attorney. Would that make sense that I hired a tax attorney? I needed a tax attorney. You have a resume that states that you're a tax attorney. So you can assume that the job you were going to carry out was to act as an attorney regarding taxes. Is that correct?
No, my resume does not say that I am a tax attorney.
Wait a minute. Your job title, it says that you're a tax attorney and you agreed with it.
No, you're mistaken. The job title I applied for was tax attorney. My resume does not state that I am a tax attorney.
Job title. So, were you lying on the resume to call yourself a tax attorney?
No, I did not call myself a tax attorney on my resume.
So this isn't a part of your resume where it said job title?
It's not.
Oh. And this thing, you have never advertised as a tax attorney, sent your resume out as a tax attorney before?
Are you currently referring to page 2?
I am saying I've got a question. The question is, have you ever advertised yourself or promoted yourself as a tax attorney in any position?
No, I've not.
Oh. Did you ever work in the DRA?
I was an intern at the Department of Revenue Administration.
The Department of Revenue Administration. So you worked for the Department of Revenue Administration for a period of time.
I was an intern at the Department of
Right.
Revenue Administration.
Now, is that the Department of Administration? Isn't this regarding taxes?
Yes.
Oh, so you worked, would you consider yourself a tax attorney working there?
No.
What were you there?
I was an intern.
And did what?
I did research. I wrote and edited.
Research on what? Taxes? What were you researching?
Taxes.
Taxes. So your background in education is taxes. Your previous employment had to do with taxes. On your resume, it says tax attorney. Now, did you do tax work for the mortgage specialist? You okay?
I did work related to taxes, yes.
Of course you did. Did you work with the DRA?
No, I don't believe I ever worked.
Did you work on information with the DRA?
I don't follow your question.
Did you do any work on my behalf or the company's behalf with the Department of Revenue Administration?
I believe I communicated with them
You
on
did?
your behalf, but I'm not certain to what extent. I believe.
So you did talk to the DRA?
Yes.
Okay. What was discussed?
I don't recall the specifics.
You don't recall the specifics of the DRA? Did we have a DRA issue, mortgage specialist and myself?
Yes.
We did. What was it?
I don't recall.
You worked on it.
Yes, I did.
You talked to the DRA,
Yes, I did.
and you have no memory of what you worked on and what was said.
I can only recall that it was a tax-related issue with the state. I don't remember the specifics.
So you were working on tax issues for myself and the company. So when I hired you as a tax attorney, it makes sense, doesn't it? That you came on as a tax attorney, seeing you're doing tax attorney work?
Yes, it would make sense that a tax attorney would do tax work.
Okay. That you did. Not that you did. But you have no recollection with the DRA.
I don't recall specifically what was discussed.
Are you
no.
saying that you only had one conversation with the DRA?
I'm saying I don't recall how many conversations I had.
So you might have had many.
Well,
So you might have had many.
I may have.
Okay, so you could have had one or many. And in many, you still can't remember one conversation.
I can't remember specifically one conversation, no.
How about, do you remember anything regarding all those conversations, as a tax attorney representing me and my company, which the issue would have been in the millions? Is that correct? The issue in the millions?
I don't recall.
You don't even remember how much money we were dealing with?
At this point, no, I do not.
Oh, but at that point, did you?
I can't really speak to a point in time that I don't recall.
Well, I'm saying, if you're communicating, quite possibly numerous times with the Department of Revenue, which you previously worked at, you have no recollection of anything?
I don't recall specifically the communications I had with them at that time,
Oh,
no.
you would agree you would have called them with a purpose. You're not calling them just for the heck of it. You must have been calling them with issues of myself and mortgage specialist. Isn't that right?
I've never made a personal call to the DRA while working at the mortgage specialist. Is that what you're trying to get
Wait a
at?
minute. Did I say that you spoke or communicated through email, text, or phone call to the Department of Revenue? You said multiple times. Is that correct?
No, that is not correct.
Well, then you're changing your testimony again.
No, sir, I'm not. The testimony I gave is I do not recall.
Well, wait a minute. You also said that I said if it was one time, could it be many? And you said it was possible that it was many.
Yes, I did.
So you did. So we've established that you were possibly had many calls or communication, text messages with the DRA.
There's a possibility I had more than one conversation with the DRA on the mortgage specialist's behalf. Yes.
Well, that was the question. So the answer is yes. Now, you wouldn't have called them unless you knew that there was an issue, right? I mean, you're working on issues.
I don't know as though I ever initiated conversation with that organization.
Are you saying they called you?
I'm saying I don't recall.
Oh, so you have no memory of making a call, receiving a call, right?
This is correct.
You have memory of an email to them, to you.
Specifically, no, I do not.
So we can say you have absolutely no memory other than it potentially could have been several communications.
That is correct.
You find that funny?
I believe your phrasing of the question to be
Well,
interesting.
well, it is interesting. So, you've had no other communications, written or otherwise, with the DRA?
Since what point in time?
I'm asking any time.
Before I worked at the mortgage
After?
specialist?
After?
I may have applied for a position with them after leaving the mortgage specialist, but I don't recall.
So, wait a minute. So you're saying that you applied for a job at the DRA right after I terminated you?
Could you define right after?
I'm sorry, I used your language of right after, so why don't you tell us?
At some point after leaving the mortgage specialist, I may have applied for a job at the DRA.
You might have.
Yes.
So you're not sure you did or not?
I'm not sure at what date I applied.
Well, I didn't ask you that. Not the date. You said you might have applied at the DRA. I
Yes.
find that a little unusual, meaning either you did apply at the DRA or you didn't. Which one is it?
I don't have that information on hand right now, but I could find it.
So you might have not even applied for the DRA.
After leaving the mortgage specialist? This is correct.
So you might not have,
Yes.
or you might have.
Yes.
Okay, so we haven't any memory previous about the DRA, and we don't really even have a memory if you applied for a job or not there. Right?
This is correct.
Wow. Okay. So again, do you remember having any written communications with the DRA that was directly from you?
Directly from me and not from the mortgage specialist? Is this the question?
Well, a communication that you delivered to the DRA with your name on it.
I do not recall delivering a communication to the DRA with my name on it. No.
All right. And you're an ethical attorney, wouldn't you say?
I try to be.
You mean you're not?
We're all human.
So you're not ethical sometimes.
I try to be.
No, I know you try. But it also infers that you're not. Because, listen, I don't have to try to be ethical. Are you saying you have to try to be ethical?
It is my opinion that all people need to try to be ethical.
Are you saying, are you ethical?
I try to be.
So you're confused whether you are or you're not.
I try to be ethical in all the things I do.
Right. But sometimes you're not ethical.
I don't agree with that statement.
Would you sign something, a complaint, for instance, if you didn't believe in it? If you thought the complaint was wrong, would you put your name on it? Would you put your name on anything unethical?
I would try not to.
You would try not to.
Yes.
So you might put your name on something unethical.
By mistake or misunderstanding, it's a possibility that that could happen.
Okay. So, as far as your memory goes, you have no communications in writing that you put your name on to the DRA.
None that I delivered, no.
Okay. And we've determined that, ethically speaking, you would not want to put your name on something that you knew truly was incorrect.
True.
Right. Because that would be unethical. Who's Kate Caceres?
I'm sorry?
What's her name?
I don't know. I couldn't understand the name.
Caceres.
Mike, can you spell it for me?
I will. I'm going to get it for you. We've got a couple here. Well, to the last one. Could you find me that one, please?
One second.
Okay.
Oh, SKOU? Yes, thank you.
Did you sign and send a criminal release to her?
Not that I recall.
Okay. So if I had one with your name on it, could you recall that?
I'd like to see the document.
Okay. Do you have her there? While we're looking for that document, I'll do the same thing. I have multiple here. Tim Powell of the IRS, did you speak to him?
Yes.
More about taxes, right?
Yes.
Okay. What was the issue with the IRS?
I believe there was an issue regarding a payment or refund issue.
Wasn't there a forged tax return involved?
You claimed there was a forged tax return, yes.
Right. Now, did you write a letter to Tim Powell of the IRS? I know you're
Yes,
looking
I
over
did.
here, so you must. Did you?
I believe I did, yes.
Okay. Would you like to read it? Would you read the whole letter, please?
Aloud?
Leon, if you don't need to read it out more at pace.
We'll make it a part of the record. You can just read it.
Dear Mr. Powell, we are writing you today on behalf of Michael Gill and the Mortgage Specialists, Inc. to seek your assistance in the furtherance of justice. Mr. Gill and MSI have been wronged by many members of the Massachusetts and New Hampshire legal communities and various regulatory bodies within the state. Mr. Gill currently feels as though he is on a one-man crusade to clean up the New Hampshire and Massachusetts legal communities. On behalf of Mr. Gill and MSI, we are contacting you to determine if you are willing to be truthful, honest, and forthcoming about your knowledge of this corruption. If you are willing to be honest about your knowledge of the corruption and help with the pursuit of justice, Mr. Gill is willing to offer you a release from any potential claims against you by both himself and MSI that arise from the facts surrounding this corruption. Much more importantly, Mr. Gill is also willing to go to the federal authorities on your behalf to seek immunity from future criminal proceedings in anticipation of and prior to your cooperation in the current civil matters. It is important to Mr. Gill that any individual who is willing to assist him in his crusade to expose this corruption is protected from its resulting blowback and any part they may have had in it originally. Please consider this and then contact me by the beginning of next week so that I may know his decision in regards to this proposal. Respectfully, Jonathan Breen, Neil Pike.
Did you write that?
No, I did not.
Who wrote it?
Jonathan Breen.
Who signed it?
He and I collaboratively worked on it,
So
and
you-
both he and I signed it.
So you did work on it. That is your agreement with John Breen as an attorney. Is your name right there?
Yes.
That's your name,
Yes.
along with John Breen. You were both acting as my attorneys, right? In the capacity of a tax-related issue. Who is Mr. Powell?
Mr. Powell is an employee of the IRS appeals office.
Right, he's the person we been speaking to. And you've agreed that you've been speaking to Mr. Powell in my behalf.
During employment at the mortgage specialist, yes, I spoke with Mr. Powell on your behalf.
Anything in writing?
I don't recall, but it seems likely.
I haven't seen it. So you're the only one speaking to Mr. Powell. He's not speaking to me. Did you know you were the only one speaking to Mr. Powell?
I knew that I was the only one with the power of attorney to speak to Mr. Powell on your behalf during my time of employment.
On tax issues.
Yes.
All right, and this is a criminal release, or a release from wrongdoing to Mr. Powell that was written by you and John Breen.
No, it's not.
Let's go back to your name. That is your name,
Yes.
and that you and Mr. Breen signed this
Yes.
in the capacity of my attorney representing me.
Yes.
I didn't write this. This is in the third person. You were representing me. So what's your understanding of what you signed and wrote here?
It is a request for information from Mr. Powell.
Information. We're offering him a criminal release and liability, aren't we?
At your direction, yes, we did.
Oh, wait a minute. We just said you didn't do anything unethical. You wouldn't put your name on that unless it was true. Either with Mr. Breen, I assume, right? So you're asking for Mr. Powell to give him a release to come forward with wrongdoing. Is that what this says?
No, that is not a criminal release.
Well, wait a minute. It's a civil release, isn't it?
It's an offer to, may I?
Yeah, you wrote it.
It is an offer for release from potential claims.
So it is a release.
No, it is not a release. It is an offer.
An offer to release them from claims. Isn't that what it says?
Yes.
Oh, it is. So it is a release. You created this with Breen and gave it to Tim Powell of the IRS, right?
On your instructions, yes.
My instructions, this wasn't written by me. You clearly say that you're representing me. So you must have saw something that thought that this was criminal for you to do this, because you wouldn't do anything unethical. Well, here we go. Here's
Just
another.
Stop for 1 second, all right, I'll mark that as
And
those
you know what we'll
issues.
do? We're going to attach these other ones to that.
The record needs them one at a time, it's just.
All right, one at a time.
If they're numbered in sequence, then you do it that way.
How about Lorraine Colby? Do you recognize that?
Yes.
Who is she?
She appears to be an employee of the Internal Revenue Service.
Have you talked to her?
I have not.
Right. Do you know who she was?
Specifically, no, I do not.
Then why are you offering her a release if you don't even know who she is or what she's done?
Because I was given a list of names to which these letters should be addressed and sent.
But wouldn't it be wrong to threaten somebody like this if it wasn't true? That'd be extortion, wouldn't it?
I don't believe that was a threat.
Oh. So you created and wrote a release for Lorraine Colby of the IRS. Does that say similar to Mr. Powell about the release? So can we make this clear that that's a release?
That is not a release.
Does it offer a release from civil damages?
It offers a release.
So it's an offer for a release. Are you comfortable with that?
Yes.
Good. So we're offering a release to Lorraine Colby of the IRS. There's another release we're offering too, that you authored along with Breen. Who's that?
Brian Battersby.
Who is that?
He was someone that you believed was pivotal to at least one of your cases.
Well, you're on offer for release. You don't know anything else that he did? Let me remind you. He was the gentleman that put us on implode, who was leveraged by the banking department by his license. Do you remember that now?
Yes.
Oh, you do remember that. That's extortion, by the way. How about this? Do you remember offering Morris Mahoney, Nick Alexander, and Eric Renner, my previous attorneys, also an offer?
I remember printing and signing that letter, yes.
So you offered an offer to release to my malpractice attorneys, Morris Mahoney, Eric Renner, and Nick Alexander. Do you remember getting a response?
I don't recall specifically, no.
You don't remember a response. Do you remember any of the responses from these letters?
I remember at least one response where Jonathan Breen and I were accused of threatening individuals. I believe it was the attorney of your ex-wife.
It was Casares, Kate Casares of the DRA. I have a copy. She threatened you and Breen. Does that bring back memories? Or are you saying that didn't happen?
I don't believe I signed a letter sent to her.
Well, I'll testify here that you did, and I'll
That you did or didn't?
that he did. All right. How about Lindsay Gill and Susan Cohen of PBD and Arnold? Did you send them an offer of release?
It would appear so, yes.
And who did they represent?
I don't recall.
Hyder? Do you recall now?
I recall the name,
Did you work with Hyder at all? Henry Hyder, attorney Henry Hyder? No?
not to my recollection, no.
Okay. Do you remember offering my divorce attorney, Bob Jutras, an offer to release?
The name on this document is Terrence Hamilton.
That's the attorney. Oh, isn't it?
I don't recall.
Oh, but you did send it, you did sign it.
This letter to Terrence Hamilton, yes.
You did, again, but you don't remember who he was. You see the thing claim against Bob Jutras? You wrote it. So the claim's against Jutras, right? My divorce attorney.
I don't recall Bob Jutras's.
Is that your name again?
Yes.
Okay, good. How about Jutras was working with another gentleman named Tom McMillan. Do you remember Tom?
Not specifically, no.
You were never at a mortgage specialist when Tom McMillan was there?
Not to my recollection.
You know the attorney sitting at the end of the table with glasses? You don't remember him?
No, I do not remember that.
But you did send him an offer for a release, didn't you?
At your instructions, yes, I did.
My instructions. You wouldn't sign anything that wasn't improper or illegal. Do you remember signing one for Divine Millimat? You know, the people who were representing in our taxes that I said was working with Powell criminally, who had a forged tax return. Do you remember sending them an offer to release?
Yes.
You did. How about Dalla Sedgwick, my attorney in the divorce? The one that was in hiding in Oklahoma. Do you remember her?
Yes.
You do. Why was she in hiding?
I can't speak to that. I have no idea.
But
why
you know
she's
she was. Here's her release. Is this a release that says Dalla Sedgwick?
hiding. No, it is not.
An offer to release?
That is a letter with an offer to release
Written by you
addressed to Marissa DeLinks.
as Dalla Sedgwick's attorney, correct? Is this a release for Dalla
No,
Sedgwick?
it's not.
An offer to release?
Yes, it is a
Yes,
letter.
it is. Okay. Well, there's a lot of releases here. Who's Bill Tazia?
I do not recall.
Who's CCR?
CCR is, they make tax publications.
Weren't they our tax attorneys?
I do not know if they represented you. I don't recall.
Who filed the tax return? You were speaking regarding the tax returns. Who was the tax preparers?
I do not recall.
Oh, you don't recall them, but you did send them an offer for release from the accountants who did the tax returns. The same accountants that had a forgery. Right? Is that your signature?
Yes.
Okay. Who's Bill Shaheen?
I believe he's a New Hampshire attorney.
You believe or do you know?
I believe he's a New Hampshire attorney.
Oh. Do you know Jean Shaheen?
Yeah, not personally.
No, but you know who she is, right?
Yes, I do.
All right. What's the name on that offer to release?
The name on that letter is William Shaheen, Esquire.
Wow. So you made an offer to release to Bill Shaheen.
At your instructions, yes.
Why? Why did Bill need one?
I was instructed to send these letters to a list of people.
So you just did what you were told. You put no mindset, no thought in that.
No thought as to what?
Well, to what? What it says. The criminal aspect of what you wrote. What happened? That says Bill Shaheen. You wrote that. And you wrote this release. Did you or did you not?
Jonathan and I both worked on those letters.
So yes. And Jonathan takes responsibility too. Who's Jennifer Raspusi?
She was an attorney, I believe.
No.
I do not recall then.
Really? Well, you sent her a release. She worked for John Ross, was a spy in the company. You offered her a release. Who was Mike Perusis?
Mike Perusis was a former attorney and was a mortgage specialist.
And is this an offer to release for him too?
It appears to be yes.
Who's Mark Cohen?
I do not recall.
You were handling the taxes. We've got you speaking multiple times with the DRA, multiple times with Tim Powell. And you don't know that CCR was the accountant or Mark Cohen was our accountant.
I don't recall the specifics from a year and a half ago, no.
Right. So Mark Cohen was our accountant. And you sent him an offer to release criminality, right?
No.
Civil. A release for civil damages. What now? Is that yes? Were you offering him a release for civil damages?
No.
Read it again, please.
What the letter offers...
No. Why don't you read it again? Where it says a release.
Could you point to the spot where you would like me to begin, please?
Mr. Gill is willing to offer you a release from potential claims against you. You see that? Second paragraph? Now, doesn't it say that?
Yes.
So you made that offer of a release.
I believe says Mr. Gill is willing to offer.
And you represented Mr. Gill.
I did.
There you go. Who's Mr. Wilbur?
I do not recall.
You don't know he was the banking commission right after furlough? Then why would you offer him a release when I said they were covering up a Ponzi scheme and that's why he had to resign? That's why I would have given a release and had you sent it. Now, again, that's signed by you.
Yes.
And an offer of release to the previous banking commission. And the banking commissioner who ran a Ponzi scheme, have you heard of FRM?
I have.
You have. Have you watched some of our videos on FRM?
I have not.
You haven't seen any of the videos?
I don't recall seeing any videos about FRM.
Yet, we'll get back to the videos. You did sign and send a release to Peter Hildreth, the man who covered up the Ponzi scheme. His brothers were on the Ponzi scheme. Did you know that Mr. Hildreth had brothers on the Ponzi scheme?
I did not know that.
You didn't. What do you know about FRM?
I don't remember much about FRM at all.
Oh, you have a strange memory. Was it a Ponzi scheme?
It was claimed to be a Ponzi scheme, I recall that.
Oh, so, well, you just said you didn't recall. So now you know it's a Ponzi scheme. Was it mostly elderly?
I really don't recall the specifics about it.
But they had lost tens of millions of dollars, their life savings. Isn't that true?
I do not know.
Well, do people make money in a Ponzi scheme other than the corrupt?
I'm not an expert on Ponzi schemes. I don't know.
Right. But yet, you offer release to the banking commission, the previous banking commission, and Robert Flory, who is the assistant banking commission, right? Doesn't that say that?
It says Robert Flory, Senior Vice President, Risk Management.
Banking department, right?
Granite State Credit Union.
Now. But was he then? Well, I'm telling you he was. So you signed a release to all the major players in a Ponzi scheme.
No, I did not.
Well, I'm telling you it's there. With your signature. Now, Mr. Powell, have you had any
Are you
conversations?
finished with this series of letters? So we'll just mark them as one proposition.
So that's 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Might want to start again.
All right. Do you have memory of what you and Mr. Powell spoke about?
I believe it was the tax issue at hand.
And what was that?
I don't recall the specifics. It was,
Do you recall anything about the tax issue?
there was an issue where it was determined that, I believe it was Mr. Gill was required to make a payment from the IRS's point of view.
And what did Mr. Gill tell you?
That was a mistake.
Well, no, it wasn't a mistake, I said. Maybe this will you recall. That Alex Walker, CCR, were leveraging me. And they fraudulently corrupted the tax return. Isn't that what I told you?
That's in this correct vein of what you would tell me. Whether you used those specific words, I don't recall.
In the vein.
Yes.
In the vein. That it also was that they forged my signature. And we had it certified that it wasn't my signature. Do you remember that?
I remember there was a dispute about a tax return that you claimed had a forged signature, yes.
And didn't we have it authenticated that it was a forgery?
I don't recall that happening, no.
Well, wouldn't that be an important point to discuss to the IRS with, a forgery on a tax return?
Yes.
Okay. Do you understand that that forgery created the situation with the DRA?
I don't believe it was ever established that it was a forgery while I was working for MSI.
Well, I disagree, and it was. And I would contest that you had to know that, because that would be the discussions. So the forgery, wasn't there an issue with putting income on my K-1?
I don't recall specifically what the issue was beyond non-payment.
Meaning the K-1 would have created the issues with the DRA, which is what it did. Right?
I don't recall the specifics.
Well, you were speaking them several times. The only issue the DRA had was, it's on your K-1. Now, it was putting on there fraudulently. Isn't that my argument?
I can't speak as to what your argument is now, and I don't recall specifically what the argument was then.
So you forgot about the forgery. You spoke multiple times to Powell, spoke multiple times to the DRA, even offered both of them releases, and you have no memory of any conversation.
Of the specific things discussed?
Any memory.
I have memories of having conversations with Powell.
And it never came forgery.
I don't recall if we ever discussed.
So it might have.
Yes.
And it also might have that you would have said that they were leveraging me, that it was done incorrectly, which has been my contention from the beginning. Isn't that so?
It's possible that I said that, yes.
Okay. So those are serious complaints. Forgery and falsifying tax returns, wouldn't you say, as a tax attorney?
I never claimed to be a tax attorney.
Only on your resume. And you look for a job at the DRA right afterwards. Do you remember from the DRA they called you back on the job? About the interview? Did they ever call you?
Not to my recollection, no.
So you don't even remember that you sent them a resume, or whether they responded to you one way or the other. No memory.
This is correct.
So, did you ever speak to Lisa Tracy about the taxes?
I don't recall specifically, but wait, yes, I did.
You did.
Yes.
Oh. Well, what was the conversation about?
I believe it was to the extent that a payment needed to be made.
Did we make a payment?
I don't recall.
We did make a payment. A payment didn't need to be made and hasn't been made. Why would we make a payment if we said it was an error?
I don't believe it was relating to the case. I believe it was a different tax-related issue.
No, we only had one. That's it. We haven't filed since. So it's the only one issue. So, in talking to Lisa, did you know she was a CPA?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. So she understands about taxes and with handling the taxes, so you would normally have to ask her. Any questions about the taxes, wouldn't you say?
I didn't quite follow your question.
Meaning if you had issues or concerns about taxes, Lisa was the controller of the company and a CPA. Wouldn't you talk to her about it?
In theory, yes.
In theory? Well, wait a minute. I'm asking you a question. You don't have to theorize. Did you speak to her or didn't you about taxes?
I believe so, but specifically I don't recall what we discussed.
You don't remember? Okay. Let me help you with the memory. Okay. Could you read that email?
Mr. Powell returned my call. We did not discuss anything of substance. He relayed that he had received a copy of my POA and said I should look forward to a call on Friday or early next week. He said he had one case he was working on ahead of ours and should be able to resolve that and get back to me as early as Friday.
Now that's to you, right?
Yes.
So that verifies the fact that you're speaking to Mr. Powell. Could you read that?
Does Mike know about this tax issue I'm working on? CCR and Schwartz are the ones who prepared the 2009 tax returns. Is offering them a release a good idea?
Okay. Now, you wrote that email.
Yes.
You did. And you just said here you couldn't have any recollection of CCR.
Today, I did not recall CCR, no.
But you can see how you reference them now as my tax people, right?
Yes, the email references CCR.
Right. And doesn't it say also that they prepared the 2009 tax return?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so now we know who report. Isn't that the tax return that's in question that's forged?
I do not recall.
It is. You brought issue to it. Now, why were you asking, is offering them a release a good idea? What were you referring to?
I don't specifically recall.
You don't have to recall. All you have to do is read. Could you read it again? What does it say?
Is offering them a release a good idea?
Who are you saying that to?
Carrie Lemieux and Christopher Driscoll.
Oh. So, what did you see? I didn't see a release. I wouldn't offer a release to CCR. Who saw a release? Who created a release? You saw one, you said. You referred to a release. What did the release say? What did you see?
That email refers to a release. Yes, it does.
Oh, so it is a release.
No, the email is not a release.
No, I didn't say the email was you referred to a release. So you must have saw a release that you're asking Driscoll, is it a good idea we give him a release, considering the issues with the 9 tax return, right?
No.
Well, let's reread it. Does Mike know about the tax issue I'm working on? Now that's you, right?
Yes.
And you're asking Driscoll. CCR and Schwartz are the ones who appeared on the 9 tax return. So I guess you did know, because you're inferring that CCR and Schwartz, and you're right in both cases, were on the 9 tax returns. Is offering them a release a good idea? Who was offering them a release? Not you, right? Because you're asking about the release. Was Driscoll offering them a release?
I don't recall Chris Driscoll ever offering anyone a release.
Well, what does this say? It says you saw a release, and
No,
you're
it does
saying...
not.
Does Mike know about the tax issues I'm working on? CCR and Schwartz are the ones who appeared on the 9 tax return. Is offering them a release a good idea? It does say that. Could you read that last line?
Yes, is offering them a release a good idea?
So someone is offering them a release. You had to see something that made you question, we're offering them a release. The inference is, we could use this to mark this.
You have to
Is
stop-
that-
You have to stop talking if she's gonna mark it.
Okay, mark it. So you're denying you saw a release?
I'm saying I don't recall having seen a release prior to 11/6.
But you will agree that 11/6, you were asking the question, is offering a release a good idea?
Yes.
Okay, good. So there is a release. Now, I want you to read this email.
I made a mistake. The underlying issue is the 2001 to 2004 tax issues. The NOL carrybacks were to be used to pay the liability from that period. Sorry for any confusion.
Oh. So remember I said it was a paperwork error, right? On the NOLs, the carrybacks. In fact, isn't that true? It was not an error. It was a move that CCR, Divine Millimat, with Alex Walker, is my contention, screwed up on purpose. And did you see the release letter that Divine Millimat offered us with leveraging on the taxes?
I don't recall. I may have.
You certain to have. We would have given that to you. You have no memory of Alex Walker from Divine Millimat leveraging us with the taxes? Isn't that the issue we had with Tim Powell? You just said you agreed that that was one of the issues.
I'm really not following your question here.
You had said the issues with Tim Powell was that they coerced me and screwed up my tax returns. We agreed that that happened, and you spoke to Powell on that.
I agree that I spoke to Tim Powell, yes. I agree that that is your
On the
contention.
NOL mistake, that's my contention. So, if we read this, I made a mistake, meaning you.
Yes.
The underlying issue, 2001 to 2004 tax issue, it's the NOL carrybacks. They were used to pay the liability. Period. You're right. Except that they didn't put them in right, did they?
That is your contention.
My contention? You didn't hear anything from the IRS that it was done that way.
I don't recall.
So you might have. You might have heard from the IRS that they were filed incorrectly.
I don't recall.
So you might have received a phone call from the IRS to say, hey, it was an error. Mike Gill doesn't have any money, we just have to refile the paperwork. Isn't that right?
I don't recall ever hearing that statement from Tim Powell, no.
Anybody else?
I don't recall ever speaking to
So if we
anyone else.
have that in writing,
He has to finish the sentence.
okay. So,
Did you finish the sentence?
the NOL carry...
Stop. Did you finish the sentence?
No, I did not.
Okay, go ahead, finish your sentence.
I don't recall having spoken to anyone else at the IRS while working with MSI.
Okay, so you don't remember again talking to anybody. So if you did, would that be a lie?
No.
So if I can prove that you were having conversations with the IRS, with different individuals, would you say I would be lying about that?
No.
So you could have talked to multiple people in the IRS.
Yes, I could have.
Did you?
I don't recall whether or not I did.
So you could have spoke to multiple people and have no. And yet, I want to mark this. Yet this email states that you knew the issues were the NOLs. Could I mark that?
Oh, which way that's...
Okay.
Okay. Can I have the last question?
Yes.
Yeah, this email states that you knew the issues were the NOLs.
Yes.
Okay. So, was it an error?
Was what an error?
So the money was owed was because the NOLs were filed incorrectly.
I don't recall specifically.
So you had no conversations with the IRS that straightened that matter out?
I do not recall a conversation with the IRS that resolved that issue, no.
Okay. This is Lisa Tracy's text message to me. Could you read that right there?
I left a message for the taxpayer advocate, 617-316-2690, to call yourself. There were no real people to talk to. Message said call would be returned within 24 hours.
What date was that?
December 10, 2013.
So what is Lisa asking me? I asked Lisa to get a taxpayer advocate, and this appears like she's called them to try to find one, right?
Sure.
Yes or no?
Yes, it appears that Lisa Tracy has called the taxpayer advocate.
Could you mark that, please? Could you read, this is Lisa's text message to me. Could you read that last message?
Treasury Inspector General for TIGTA, Robert E. O'Malley, Special Agent in Charge. 201 Varick Street, room 1050, New York, New York, 10014. Tel 917-408-5640.
Now that's Titka, right?
Yes, that says Tigta.
Could we, well, let me ask you. Do you know what Titka is?
I don't recall what the Tigta stands for, no.
Is it the criminal division of the IRS?
I do not know.
Being a tax attorney, right? It's Treasury Inspector General. Do you know what a Treasury Inspector General is?
I don't know the specifics of the job title, no.
Well, he's the #1 guy on the criminal aspects of the IRS. And we're coordinating with him and having Lisa get a hold of him while you're employed with me. Isn't that correct? This is the back of this. So it was the same day, December 10th.
That page isn't dated, I have no idea.
We'll mark it. So we have established that you and Lisa were communicating regarding taxes, right?
Yes, Lisa and I have communicated.
Okay. Now, I asked Lisa, and Lisa asked you to find a taxpayer advocate, didn't she?
I believe she did, yes.
She did. So you see me texting Lisa, asking her for help on December 10th. Get us a taxpayer advocate, right?
I see Lisa conveying information to you about a taxpayer advocate.
Not information, just a telephone number to get one.
The message states that she left a message and that the taxpayer advocate would call.
Right. So she doesn't have a name. She doesn't have a person. I'm asking her to make a phone call to get one. Right?
No. This is a message from her to you saying that she has called and they will call you back.
Right. So what I said was, so that's yes. What I said was, is she's making an inquiry to get one. And they're waiting for a call back to hear from somebody. Right?
It would appear that you were being told to expect a call from them.
Right. So, Who did you're saying you have no memory of speaking to anybody at the IRS?
I recall speaking to Mr. Powell.
But that's it. So if we had somebody from the IRS who told you we had no issues and it could be fixed and we would owe no money, you'd come forward with that, wouldn't you?
I'd come forward with that?
Meaning you would process and we would owe no money. And you...
Had I been given that information during my employment of MSI, yes, I would have done everything in my power to resolve that situation.
But that is what happened. That's exactly what happened now, isn't it?
No, that is not exactly what
Well,
happened.
let's go over it. So, you made an inquiry to the IRS for a taxpayer advocate, didn't you?
Yes.
You did. So Lisa did, but you did. Now, who'd you speak to?
I don't recall a name.
Wait a minute. This is regarding maybe $10 million. You don't remember someone you talked to at the IRS that said it was an error and it could be fixed?
No, I do not.
Oh, but you don't remember who you spoke to?
That's what I just answered.
And that you obviously... So, does Janet Rumford ring a bell?
No,
You never spoke to her.
I didn't answer that.
I know you didn't answer it.
What I had said is the name does not ring a bell.
Oh. Well, I'll prove that you... But let's keep going. So, I want you to look at this. I'm going to put this in. You remember Larry Schwartz, don't you?
The name Schwartz relating to the...
Well, we just said CCR and Schwartz about 2 minutes ago. Do you remember now? 2 minutes. Okay, good. Could I put this in as... I'll come through it first. All right. Could you... So Janet Rumsford, you had no memory of.
I don't recall the name specifically, no.
Could you read that last line, please?
C.C. Michael Gill.
The paragraph ahead.
I apologize for the timing issues that arose preventing the IRS from processing the original 2009 Form 1045 application for tentative refund. Thank you for your patience and understanding.
Wow. That's a taxpayer advocate saying it's a mistake. What date does that say on this?
September 28, 2011.
That's right. So we had a taxpayer advocate 2 years before this that said it was a mistake. I'd like to submit that as evidence. Now, do you find that a little unusual? 2 years before that, it could have been all resolved. Do you know I never saw this? Now, you do remember in December 10, 2013, I'm asking for one. Doesn't it make sense that if I already had one that apologized for the mistake, wouldn't we have done this?
It would make sense that it should have been done in 2011, yes.
Right. But you didn't know about this.
I wasn't your employee in 2011. No, I did not know about that.
Either did I until this last year. So I'm asking you, at any time while you were in my employment, did you ever see this taxpayer document?
I don't recall having seen that specific document.
But if you would have taken immediate action and said it was a mistake and we didn't owe any money now, didn't it?
Are you asking me would I have acted, or did the document say a specific
Wouldn't you
thing?
have acted on this?
Yes.
So we wouldn't owe any money.
As I've said, I would do everything I could to try to get the situation
Right.
resolved.
So, if I can prove that you spoke to Janet Rumsford, how many taxpayer advocates do you think there might be in the IRS?
I have no idea.
Well, I could guess. Let's guess. Thousands? Possibly?
I have no idea.
Right. So how is it 2 years later you speak to Janice Rumsford?
Trying to resolve the same issue? That seems to make sense.
It does? So, do you know the taxpayer advocates come up randomly? So you know out of these thousands, after 2 years of me not knowing it, you not knowing about it, you randomly pick Rumsford.
I don't know that that's the case.
Well, it is the case, because I have emails now that brings us to Rumsford. Right. Carrie, to Neil. Miss Rumsford has informed me they have not looked into the basement.
Wait. I didn't get that. Has informed me that what?
Has informed me that she has not yet looked in the basement of her office building for files I had previously requested. Now this is Carrie to you. I asked about the meeting with,
This is Neil to me.
oh, Neil, okay, my bad. This is you to Carrie. Miss Rumsford has informed me. So on 12/17, 7 days after I'm looking for a taxpayer advocate, you're speaking to Rumsford. The same Rumsford that I would have acted on immediately and resolved the issue years ago. But now she's speaking to you. And she's saying she hasn't looked in the basement for her files. What do you think she has in her basement?
Files.
I didn't give them any files. The only thing from the taxpayer advocate is this.
Unless you had filed a tax return at any point.
No, we didn't. So, that's right, we didn't.
Then how can you have a tax issue if you've never filed a tax return?
Up until the issue. Not one since, because it would be criminal since, which you were a tax attorney and should have known. So, you can smile, but how about this? We've got you on an email speaking to Rumsford 2 years later, saying she's looking in the basement. You know what she's looking in the basement for? This. You know why? She knew we didn't have it. That's why you ran up for Rumsford. Do you know how we found this tax advocate letter?
No, I do not.
We fired Lisa Tracy, went through her office and found it. Was there for over 2 years. Do you find that interesting?
Not particularly.
Well, you were working with Lisa Tracy on the taxes.
I was not working closely with Lisa Tracy at all.
You were communicating information with her. All right. So now we've got on 12/17, you talking to Rumsford, and Rumsford saying, I gotta go in the basement, look for the file, right? Right?
That is an email from me to Carrie, apparently.
Could you read that email?
Discussing a conversation with Rumsford.
Good.
Ms. Rumsford has informed me that she has not yet looked in the basement of her office building for the files I previously requested. I asked about a meeting, and she and Tom Morley of TIGTA and gave her the case number I had been provided. Per open paren 71130900058-C close paren. Ms. Rumford told me she would reach out to Special Agent Morley and see if a meeting could be arranged.
Right. So that's your email.
Yes.
And that's you speaking to Rumsford. Isn't that true?
No. That is me speaking to Carrie Lemieux.
Are you referring to the information in a conversation you had with Miss Rumsford?
Yes.
Oh, you did. So now do you have a memory of Miss Rumsford? You just said you never spoke to anybody in the IRS other than Tim Powell. Would you like to change your answer now?
I never said that. I said I didn't have recollection of speaking with anyone other than Tim Powell at the IRS.
So Do you have one now with Miss Rumsford, since you've now verified a conversation with her?
If she's an employee of the IRS, then yes.
She's a taxpayer advocate. I just showed you this. She's the same person that said it was a mistake and was going to fix. So 2 years later, you just happened to accidentally bump into her. So, I'm also asking for a meeting with Tom Morley at TITCA. You didn't remember what TITCA stood for, yet you put TITCA in your email, right?
Yes.
You understand what TITCA is now?
I still do not know what those letters stand for, no.
So you're writing these letters down, and you're putting these emails together on issues of 10 million. You don't even know what it stands for.
At this point, I don't recall that information, no. At the time of writing the letter, I'm sure I had a much better grasp of what those letters stood for.
Oh. So why would you be asking for a meeting for someone who's a criminal investigator for TITCA?
May I see the email?
It's yours email.
I believe it was because I was provided with the names and the case number.
It's a taxpayer advocate. The name's what case number? This case number?
In the email?
Oh, you mean the criminal complaint number. So now you know that we have a criminal complaint with TITCA. I don't know if that brings back memories. But you're trying to put a meeting together with Tom Morley. Is that right?
It appears as though that's what the email says, yes.
Well, it says that directly, not Peter. So now do you have any memory of Morley?
Not particularly, no.
Would we be getting a hold of someone from TITCA if there wasn't a criminal issue?
I don't believe you would be trying to get in touch with him if you didn't believe there was a criminal issue.
Ah. And you wouldn't be trying to get a hold of him unless you thought so too, wouldn't you?
Not necessarily.
Oh, so you would just get a hold of the criminal division of the IRS because you didn't think there was any issues?
If there was someone who wanted a meeting and I thought I could help bring that meeting about, I would try to help schedule that meeting.
Right. So with the DRA, you have no memory. Tim Powell, you have no memory, and all these people. You have no memory of one conversation with anybody from the IRS or the DRA so far.
Discussing specific issues of these cases?
Any issues?
No, I don't.
Right. And how long ago was this?
Over a year and a half ago?
Would you consider yourself to have a bad memory?
Yes, I would.
Is that a good thing to have as an attorney, a bad memory?
I don't think so, no.
So you think a bad memory is probably an asset for a lawyer. You know what? I think you're right. All right.
Before we go to the next one, mark this one.
All right, let's mark this.
Can I ask for a bit of a break?
Let's mark this one instead. I'm going to let you read this letter.
Well, you have to mark whatever you
Okay.
refer to, so.
Mike, after she's done marking, she would like to take a quick break.
Are you almost done? Unless you,
No, well,
and I don't mean to,
you want to take a break?
I wouldn't mind.
Okay,
It's been like an hour and a half.
we'll take a break. Few minutes?
Yes,
Okay.
just a stretch and,
You know what, could I just finish one thing here?
absolutely.
Hang on
But,
one second.
but you wait.
Okay.
So, did you want to mark that
Yes,
also?
yes, let's mark it.
This is the one though, but.
Yes.
But we're gonna mark that as 11. Okay.
So when you were speaking to Powell, it was the errors in the NOLs and the forgery. Is that your memory?
I recall that there was information in here about the NOLs. I don't recall specifically what the issue was when speaking with Tim Powell.
Could you read if I mark it first?
Sure. So that's 12.
Yep.
Oh, that's why I need a break. Okay.
Okay. Now, this is an email from Lisa to you. Could you read that?
Mike would like you to call an IRS taxpayer advocate, 1-877-275-8271. Explain the situation, fraud in the levy. Not only could they help us handle this, but also how to criminally deal with it. Also, he thinks we should refer to the file number for the criminal IRS investigator in Boston.
So this is Lisa's communication to you.
Yes,
Oh. And it was regarding the criminal division of the IRS to investigate, right?
yes.
And the situation is fraud. Right? Fraud.
It appears so, yes.
Right. She didn't mention we had a taxpayer advocate. She didn't mention Rumsford. And there's no communication between the two of you that says that. So again, how did you get Rumsford?
I do not know who provided me that name. It may have been the same person who provided me the number that was in that email.
We gotta give her a break.
Did you mark this, please?
These are a lot of words. If she can't type, you don't have a record.
This was from Linda Nakamura. Who's Linda?
Linda was a paralegal at MSI while I was employed at MSI.
What kind of employee was Linda?
She was a paralegal.
What kind of paralegal? Did she do a good job?
I never had complaints about Linda's work.
You didn't come to Kerry Lemieux with multiple complaints about Linda's attitude?
I do not recall.
Oh.
I don't see.
But
that
if we
was-
said that you did, you wouldn't be that surprised?
It's possible.
Would she not come to meetings? Just excuse herself?
It was my understanding that her presence at meetings wasn't always required.
Well, that's not the case. You assume that. You didn't hear me say that.
I don't recall hearing you say either way.
And you don't recall complaining multiple times about her attitude?
I remember that she was a negative person.
She was. Okay. This is an email from Linda regarding, it says Neil Pike, taxpayer advocate. And it says to Breen and Neil. Could you read that one?
Can you do this?
I'm almost done. I just wanted to finish the tax piece.
It's fine, it's fine.
This is the last piece of that. Go ahead.
I spoke with Janet Rumford this morning. She indicated that she was unable to find any records for Mike's previous case. She also said that Mr. Leahy, the Treasury Inspector General, declined to meet with her and Mike, citing a conflict of interest. When I asked her what the conflict was, she said that his office and her office has two different missions. She also said that Mr. Leahy told her that he had a meeting personally with Mike. She could not find her notes, but she knew the meeting was supposed to be sometime before Christmas. I called Ms. Rumford back again to inquire who exactly Mr. Leahy was. She then backtracked and said she wasn't even sure that was the right name. She said she was talking about the name that Neil provided to her, I also asked her if there was any other way for us to get the records she no longer has. She said she believes the hard copy has been destroyed as is policy after a certain amount of time has passed, and also said she also says she does have an electronic copy, but she's not sure how much of it she can provide to me. She said she would summarize what she had and include it in the letter I asked her to send me regarding all the information she provided me.
So you got this email.
Yes.
Says Neil Pike. So after a year and a half, we read this. Miss Rumford goes into a basement and can't find our file, which really is the taxpayer advocate agreement, settlement agreement, for nothing. She can't find that. And then, do you find anything odd about this?
I don't know what you mean by odd.
Well, I don't know. When Mr. Leahy's supposed to be the Treasury Inspector General, and then we call back Miss Rumsford, we're not even sure if Miss Leahy has a name. What is that? What's making that noise?
I have no idea. That's not my phone.
It's feedback, I don't know.
So it said that Miss Rumsford said that she's not even sure if Mr. Leahy's the right name for the Inspector General. Do you find that odd?
I can't speak for her knowledge of who anyone is.
I'm asking you if it feels. Let's see the oddity. Inspector General from the IRS, from TIDCA, and we're not sure if that's his real name. Does say that, right?
I believe that's what the email says.
Right. The fact that you believe that the IRS has lost their information after a year and a half, has that been your experience as a tax attorney, that they're often losing stuff?
That email does not express my ideas. That
I
is
didn't.
an email to
I'm
me.
asking your idea. Do you find that odd, that they lose our paperwork? Is it your experience that the IRS loses your paperwork?
I have very rarely asked the IRS for paperwork.
All right. So I guess losing your paperwork after a year and a half, the same paperwork, by the way, would give you a complete and utter release from the mortgage specialist and myself.
Break.
I'd like to take a break.
Thank you.
Okay. We're back. Neil, where do you work right now?
Currently, I work at Electric Insurance.
An insurance company.
Yes.
When did you get that job?
December 1st of last year.
So that's a 14.
Yes, 2014.
Right after you were terminated with mortgage specialists, where did you work?
I was unemployed for quite some time.
Did you have any references with this insurer?
With an insurer,
Well, what's the company you work for now?
Electric Insurance.
What is that? What do they do?
One portion of the company is they underwrite insurance. Another portion is what they call legal support solutions, which is document review for General Electric companies.
Would you call yourself an insurance attorney?
No, I would not.
Okay, but you work for an insurer.
I work for Electric Insurance, which a portion of their business is an insurance company. Yes.
Did you have any references? How did you find that job?
It was suggested to me by Sarah Wolf Boyd.
Didn't she work for us?
Yes.
And you kept in contact?
Yes.
Where'd she work?
She works at Electric Insurance.
So, two of my attorneys are now working for insurers. You and Sarah, right?
Yes, we both currently work at Electric Insurance.
Right. And we have multiple lawsuits from your experience, right?
During my time at MSI, there were multiple lawsuits, yes.
And we're dealing with insurers.
I don't recall specifically whether or not there were insurance companies involved in those lawsuits.
You mean you have no recollection that insurers covered these attorneys for malpractice?
I have no idea who covered their malpractice insurance.
Really? No idea.
Yes.
So, I'm telling you that each and every one of these attorneys have an insurer. Does that seem out of line?
No.
Oh. Have you been in contact with any other person regarding this case, whether it be text messages, emails, everything, regarding my case?
Regarding this case against you?
Not this case, all the issues that we've had, your representation of me. Thereafter, who have you talked to regarding mortgage specialist, myself, and the issues?
I've discussed the issues with no one.
Okay. Of all the employees we have you been in contact with anybody?
I don't know who currently still works for you.
Past or present, we're trying to find who have you been talking to?
About the issues of your cases.
I'm not
during
asking
my
you
employment?
I'm asking you who have you talked to that previously worked for us? So, I don't know, does there seem to be that many?
Let's see. Since my removal from MSI,
Right.
I have spoken with, Carrie Lemieux. I have spoken with Linda Nakamura.
When? When, Linda? When's the last time you spoke to her? By memory, please.
I have no idea by memory.
But you did speak to her.
Yes.
Could it have been a week ago?
No.
A year ago?
Possibly. I have a document with the date on it. Would you like me to show that to
No,
you?
but you've talked to Linda. Was it about the case?
It was about your new attorney.
Who?
I don't recall his last name, but Brian. He's in the room with us.
Dan Lynette? You ever speak to Dan?
No.
Lisa Tracy?
No.
Any attorneys?
Yes.
Who?
Sarah.
Anyone else?
Yes. Jonathan Breen.
Where does Jonathan work?
I have no idea.
When did you talk to him last?
Maybe a week after we both lost our jobs.
Why did I terminate you?
We refused to bring a case against someone who you claim wrongly presented himself as an attorney for a tax dispute, I believe.
Well, that's... So you refused to sign this complaint because you thought it was false.
I refused to draft what I believed was a baseless complaint.
Yet you don't remember even the guy, the person.
Correct, I do not recall his name.
Could his name be John Friedman?
It could very well be, yes.
So you're saying on a complaint that you got terminated for, you're not even sure of the name. Jonathan Friedman. Right? So you don't remember?
I don't recall specifically the name, no.
Right. But now, you would have, before you made a decision that went against my decision to got you terminated and John Breen terminated, you would have researched the complaint thoroughly.
I would have researched the underlying issues, yes.
You would. And still don't remember Jonathan Friedman?
Not specifically that name, no.
Okay. Did you read a deposition given by Mr. Friedman?
I very well may have. I recall reading many depositions during my time at MSI.
Many? How many is many?
More than 2.
So more than 2 is many?
Yes.
Well, a couple is many. So you could have read 2 depositions. Do you remember who they were?
No, I don't.
Because we only had 1 at that time. John Friedman's. So now that you said you ran 2, we can assume that you read this one.
I never said I read 2.
You said you saw 2 depositions. Are you telling me you were just staring at them and not reading them? Or were you reading them?
I believe the answer I gave was I recall reading depositions during my time at MSI.
Okay. And I'm telling you there was only 1. Now, the complaint that you refused was Friedman.
That you reviewed?
The
That
complaint
you refused
that he refused,
was Friedman.
along with Breen. Do you remember who John Friedman was?
If John Friedman was the one that you asked me to draft the complaint about,
Yes.
then it was someone who you claim represented himself as an attorney to represent you at an administrative hearing, I believe.
Okay. Well, let's remind you, because if you would have gone to put a complaint together with Friedman, off of Friedman's deposition, you would have had the reading. It would make sense. You would read his deposition to form your complaint, wouldn't you say?
If it had to do with the underlying issues, yes. If I was drafting a complaint,
Okay.
yes.
So it absolutely does. Now, Mr. Friedman was our attorney regarding the New Hampshire Banking Commission. Does that ring a bell?
Not particularly, no.
Well, you were writing the complaint and you thought we didn't have an issue. Did you know Mr. Friedman didn't have a New Hampshire license?
I remember that the issues you presented to me was someone didn't have a New Hampshire license and you believe they represented themselves to be a New Hampshire attorney.
Okay, good. So we're still on Friedman now. Then you're right about Friedman. Then he was handling the case against the complaints with the New Hampshire Banking Department that I said was leveraging us. Did you hear me say the New Hampshire Department was pulling false consent orders?
Today, no.
I didn't say it today, previously. That was my accusation.
I don't recall you specifically saying those words, no.
Really. Yet you asked for a release, offered a release with the banking commissioner, Hildreth, Wilbur, the next banking commission, and the assistant Flory. Who do you think was handling those issues but Friedman? You had sent in those requests. All right, so you have some knowledge of the banking issues. Wouldn't you say you had some knowledge about the banking issues?
At that point in time, yes, I believe I would have information about banking issues.
Good. So, we were being leveraged by the banking commission. Friedman was handling those complaints, right?
I have no idea.
Okay, well he was. If you read the deposition, you would have read that. We agreed that you would have had to read the deposition. So, do you remember reading that Friedman said the corruption in New Hampshire and the banking department was the worst he's ever seen in 30 years?
I do not recall reading that.
It's in a deposition. Do you remember him saying that we should go to the FBI?
I don't remember anything that is written in that.
Oh, so the one piece that you would have used as a guideline for a complaint that I fired you over, you were telling me you have no knowledge of anything that's in this deposition.
I'm telling you, I don't recall reading the specific words that are written in that deposition. No, I don't.
Right, so when it's corruption in the banking department worse than 30 years, that could slip your mind.
That is something that has no impact on me on a daily basis, and so I would have no reason to remember it up till this point.
You lost your job regarding this issue. I fired you on this. You and Breen. Now, didn't I?
Yes.
There you go. And now you're saying when we read through this, where he's saying to go to the FBI, you have no knowledge. Worst corruption he's ever seen in 30 years, you got no knowledge. Did you know he sat as a hearing officer of the BBO?
No.
Oh, you didn't? You seem to be
I don't
uncertain.
recall that right now.
Oh, you don't. But maybe later you're going to recall it.
I don't recall things that I've read a year and a half ago. No, I don't.
Wow. Because if you did read this, This is clearly a complaint. Did you realize right afterwards, remember the deposition, that John Friedman had asked for a release of Mr. Lambert? It was all during the time you were here. Mr. Lambert, Attorney Lambert, was going to mediate, remember? And he asked for Mr. Friedman's release. Do you recall that?
I recall that there was much discussion about release and mediation.
Mr. Friedman. Now, why would Mr. Friedman need a release if he didn't do anything wrong?
I can't speak for him.
Well,
I have
you
no
did.
idea.
You said he didn't have an issue and refused to file a complaint against an attorney who didn't have a New Hampshire license, who said it was the worst corruption in 30 years, who said we should be going to the FBI. Right?
I refused to draft a complaint that I thought was meritless. Yes.
And yet you have no memory of the merit.
I do not recall the information that is in that. No.
You don't recall, you didn't read it, so how do you not recall it? So you're just saying, I know nothing what's in this. There's a lot, you would have read the whole thing. You would have figured your complaint. Okay. Just a bad memory again. All right. Mr. Driscoll. Do you remember Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
You do. Tell me what you remember about Mr. Driscoll.
He was a tall man. He had a background in litigation.
He was a tall man? Is that what you
Yes.
remember?
Yes.
Okay. What else do you remember?
He had a background in litigation.
What else?
That's about it.
So he was a tall and he was a litigator. That's all you got.
Yes.
You don't remember anything else?
Not specifically, no.
Did you work closely with Mr. Driscoll while he was here?
We worked together for a short period of time, yes.
4 days, in fact, wasn't it?
I don't recall specifically.
What happened to Mr. Driscoll?
I believe Mr. Driscoll was terminated.
Do you believe or no?
I don't recall. I believe that he was terminated.
He was terminated. Why was he terminated?
I have no idea.
None?
Specifically now, no, I do not know.
And you thought Mr. Driscoll was a good guy then, right?
I never said that. I
We
think
did terminate him.
4
but-
days seems a short period of time to
So all
know
you
man's
knew-
character.
Wait, 4 days seems a short period of time
To know a man's character.
Thank you.
Right. Okay. Could you read this page out loud, please? I want you to notice you signed it. Could you read it? Read the top.
Regarding Christopher Driscoll, facts.
All right, no. Now, who, did you write this? You and Breen? Right there?
It seems quite likely.
Good. It's exactly. So, read, now, other than being tall and a litigator, you knew nothing else about Driscoll. You prepared that document. Could you please read it now?
The facts we have been made aware of appear to be as follows.
Who's we? You're including yourself.
If I had to guess, I would say Jonathan Breen and myself as signatures.
Okay, very good.
1. Christopher Driscoll claimed to be a temporary employee at Liberty Mutual. 2. Driscoll submitted his resume to the Mortgage Specialists, Inc. in an attempt to gain employment with MSI as an attorney. 3. Driscoll was contacted by MSI and informed that he would not be able to interview for the open attorney position. 4. Driscoll made an argument that his temporary employment at Liberty would not present a conflict and demanded an interview, which was subsequently granted. 5. Driscoll was interviewed and hired as an attorney at MSI, presumably by Mike Gill. 6. Driscoll was employed for 1 week and then terminated. During that week, no pleadings were filed by Mike Gill or MSI concerning the Devine case. MSI received the NOD, orders on renewed motions, which dismissed the Devine case in its entirety. 7. Liberty is the insurer of Devine, Millamant, and Branch, a defendant in what was at the time pending litigation concerning Mike Gill and MSI. 8. Driscoll filed appearances for all ongoing lawsuits at the beginning of his employment with MSI. 9. Driscoll has not yet filed withdrawals from any case for which he filed appearances. 10. According to the U.S. Federal District Court for the District of Massachusetts, notices have been sent to Driscoll via email at christopher0152.driscoll@libertymutual.com. This email address has been changed since Driscoll's termination because during his employment notices were sent to him via cdriscoll@mslawyers.org. 11. Due to this change in email address, it appears Driscoll is once again employed at Liberty. Roman 2. Issues. 1. If Driscoll is working for Liberty and is working on the Divine policy in any way, a conflict of interest would likely occur. Little I, the proper recourse for this would be to file an ethical complaint against Driscoll with the Mass BBO. 2. Driscoll has not filed withdrawals as required by the Mass and New Hampshire rules of professional conduct. Little I, the proper recourse for this would be to file an ethical complaint against Driscoll with the New Hampshire ADO and the Mass BBO.
Okay. Now, your testimony was, the only thing you remember of Driscoll was, he was tall and a litigator.
Yes,
You wrote this document.
I did.
With brain.
Yes.
There's a lot more that you didn't say you knew. You prepared this document, pretty itemized too, didn't you?
Yes, we were provided with that information and we wrote it down.
You provided.
Yes, if you
You
read
created
the
this.
first line, it says made
facts
aware
will-
of.
Right. Well, you worked with them. I didn't. Oh, well, wait a minute. You wrote this, didn't you? Okay. Now, do you remember reading that part where it said Liberty Mutual?
Yes.
You testified today that you didn't know of any of the attorneys covered by insurers now, didn't you?
I said that I don't know who was covering their malpractice insurance.
Well,
yes.
in fact, you're saying they may not have it. I'm saying logically they would. Then you said yes.
Try to let him, okay, it's tough when there's two of you.
Okay.
Okay.
So, did you disclose that Divine Millimat was represented by Liberty Mutual? You just
Did I
read it.
disclose?
Did you indicate that Divine Millimat was represented by Liberty?
The document states that I was made aware of the fact that, yes, that is the case.
That's the case. So, did you also indicate on this that Driscoll, in fact, previously worked for Liberty Mutual?
The document says that, yes.
Well, it's more than a document now, isn't it? Because it also, it's on his web address, isn't it? His email
No idea.
address. Okay, but you did write down the fact that it appeared that he went back to Liberty Mutual. Your words, right?
It's drafted on that document that I was made aware of the fact that it appears as though he had gone back to work there.
Wow. So he claimed to work for Liberty Mutual, worked for 4 days, got all his mail to Liberty Mutual, and afterwards, in your own writings, he's working for Liberty Mutual.
In my own writings, I was told those facts.
Whoa, well, wait a minute. You saw the document with Driscoll right here. Why don't we add this? We'll put this in too. We're going to put this and this. We can make it an attachment. Could you read that right here where it says Driscoll's email address?
You need to stop, you know that, right?
Would you like to mark these first? Or would you like my response?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's mark it. So, all of 14?
Yeah, put it together.
Okay.
Should do the other one first.
So put the sticker on
That one.
this, thank you.
He said it's an attachment to that.
So,
because what you're seeing here was the evidence. Not me saying it, that you saw. Now, what does it say that Trish Driscoll's email address is?
This email shows Christopher S.M. Driscoll, Christopher0152.driscoll@libertymutual.com.
Okay, thank you. So, you're aware that Liberty represented Divine Millimat, who we were suing, correct?
If those statements are true, then yes.
Well, they're your statements
No, they were statements I was made aware of,
that you put on this agreement.
which were provided to me.
Well, I just showed you one that it says Liberty Mutual. So let's fact. You can agree if Liberty Mutual is the insurer for Divine Millimat, and Trish Driscoll is still working for Liberty Mutual while working for me, would that be a conflict?
If he was working on Divine Millimet files at Liberty Mutual while representing you, in that case, or is this the specific question you're asking?
Liberty Mutual is the insurer for Divine Millimat, who we are suing, and they are representing. Is it a conflict for him to be working for me and Liberty Mutual at the same time?
If he's working on that file, yes. Otherwise, no.
Really? Well, all you remembered was he was tall and a litigator.
Yes.
Do you remember now that he worked at Liberty Mutual?
I remember being told that he worked at Liberty Mutual.
Did you just see the email address?
Yes, I did.
Does it indicate the address is at Liberty Mutual?
Yeah?
You want to read that again, but go ahead.
Yes.
Okay. So he works for an insurer. Sarah Wolf Boyd works for an insurer, and so do you, right?
I have no idea where Chris Driscoll works right now.
Well, it says he works at Liberty Mutual,
It says he has an email address through Liberty Mutual.
but he did work there. Do you have an email address at Liberty Mutual?
No.
Me either. You think that might be because we don't work there? Well, that's how stupid you sound. Okay, now, do you remember Driscoll a little bit better now?
Not particularly.
So you have never seen Driscoll again?
No.
I've never heard about it.
No.
Would you be surprised that nobody can find Driscoll? Would you be surprised if he went missing?
Yes, I think when
Okay.
people go missing, it's surprising.
We'll be surprised because we can't find him. Now, do you remember a PR company that we have to look at a document?
Yes.
I'm sorry, that we had you look at a document?
Contract document.
In your answer?
Yes.
Do you remember what happened?
I remember I made notes on the contract and sent it to you for review. I edited it once or twice, and I think the deal fell through.
No, I never saw the edited version. I just got it. We signed a contract, didn't we? On Friday, that Friday.
I have no idea what date you're talking about.
Well, you reviewed the contract,
Yes, I reviewed a contract from a PR firm.
and the very next day they canceled after signing a contract. Do you recall that?
I recall that there was a conflict where there was a signing and then a change in terms, and
No conflict. No conflict. Someone spoke to him. Did you speak to the PR company?
no, I did not speak to
So
the
you
PR
were the last person.
Okay.
You were the last person to actually handle a document for them, and the very next day they canceled without explanation. Nothing?
Was there a question there?
Yeah, without explanation. Do you have an explanation?
An explanation for why they canceled the contract?
Right. Well, you
No.
sign a contract. No, okay. The videos. Datacorruption.org. Are you familiar with it?
I know that it exists.
How do you know that?
I was told by employees,
Who?
Carrie Lemieux, Sherry, I do not recall her last name, I believe she was in HR. I don't recall anyone else.
You know, it's funny, you just mentioned a couple names. You just said you never talked to anybody from mortgage specialists. Now we just came up with Sherry. You know what's funny? Sherry's the one who had the friend of the PR firm. Do you remember that now?
Not specifically, no.
Right. Why would you talk to Sherry? What would it be regarding?
She was in human resources, and I asked her to look at her resume.
She was in employment.
Wait. Mike, I really can't.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
She was in employment. What did you talk to Sherry about?
I asked her to look at my resume so that I could try to get a different job after I had been terminated.
Oh, so when you said that you didn't bring her name up as someone you talked to at Mortgage Specialist just a half hour ago.
You had asked me about attorneys that I had spoken to.
Employees, I said. Employees, I said. In fact, I mentioned Dan Lynette. Is he an attorney?
Not to my knowledge, no.
So, do you want to answer that question again? Did you speak to anyone, communicated through any means, any former employees of the Mortgage Specialist?
Beyond those listed, I spoke with Sherry. I have posted messages on social media to Christy. I, by happenstance, ran into Ashley at a store and said hello.
Emails, phone calls?
No,
Well, we just came up with 4 more people that you didn't know a half hour ago.
because none of them were attorneys, and you had asked specifically about attorneys.
I did not. I said Dan Lynette, in fact. All right. Now, did you know, it's funny that you remember Sherry. She's the one who coordinated the PR people. Did you know that?
I don't recall knowing that, no.
Do you recall that it was her friends that owned the company?
Not specifically, no.
And do you recall that Sherry was fired because of it?
No.
But you talked to her.
Yes.
And her being fired regarding this issue with the PR firm that you looked over the contract with. You don't recall any conversation that had to do with that?
Not specifically, no.
Oh. So you didn't tell her you got fired, and she didn't tell you she got fired.
I don't remember specifically, no.
So you just simply don't remember. Do you remember looking at a Cohen complaint?
Not specifically a Cohen complaint, no.
The tax attorney Cohen. We were filing a Friedman and Cohen complaint.
Not specifically, no.
Not specifically. But you do have some memory then that Cohen was our tax attorney and we were suing him. That was the gentleman who forged the document.
I don't recall the specifics of many of the cases or proposed litigation during that time.
Yet again, as the tax preparer who shows up with a certified forgery, you again send over an offer to release to Mr. Cohen. Now, didn't you?
As instructed by you, if that name was on the list, then yes.
Oh, so you did. But you wouldn't file a complaint that it wasn't justified. But you had no problem signing a release because they weren't justified?
I never signed a release.
An offer to release. You signed many of those now, didn't you?
Yes.
Many. So, you're saying you don't remember Cohen, yet you signed the release with Cohen.
I never signed a release.
An offer to release.
If his name was on the list provided to me,
He is. So how would you explain that?
I was instructed to draft a letter with the language in that slightly revised. Jonathan and I collaborated to write the letter addressed to the people on a list provided by Carrie from you, and we sent those letters.
So you wrote the letter in Breen?
Yes.
Not me. You.
As I just answered.
No, I'm giving you a question. Just answer the question. So you signed them and Breen. But there was nothing that I put on that document.
We were given information from Carrie that came from you as to what should be included in the letter.
Names was mine. I didn't write that. You wrote it, now didn't you?
Jonathan and I wrote those letters.
Yes, you did.
Yes.
Did you ever speak to Tom Morley?
I have no recollection of whether or not I did. Can we
So if
establish
you
again
t-
who Tom Morley is?
Well, according to your emails, he is an investigator for TIPCA, the criminal division of the IRS. The email said that you were in communication with him. What did you say to Tom Morley?
I don't recall.
Is there anyone from the IRS? Now, we just showed that you only said you talked to Mr. Powell. Right? That was your testimony. But now we know you spoke to Kate Caceres of the DRA. We know you talked to Rumsford, who is taxpayer advocate. Now, right? We got those communications from you and her.
To answer your multi-stage question, I had testified that I didn't recall speaking to anyone besides Powell at the IRS. Yes, I communicated with those other people that you've shown I have had email or phone conversation with in the exhibits.
So you would have had no memory unless I showed it to you.
Correct.
Can we take a break?
Yes.
Back on the record. All right. Mr. Driscoll.
No?
Back on the record.
Well,
Are you talking about Driscoll?
I'm asking a question about Driscoll.
oh, okay. Pardon me.
Do you remember being on a phone call to me with Mr. Driscoll on it, saying that you had a conversation with Mr. Powell and you were all upset and, they were going to take everything? Do you remember that phone call?
Not specifically, no.
Do you remember being on a phone call with me, with Mr. Driscoll, on the phone regarding the IRS and Tim Powell?
Not specifically, no.
You don't remember that Driscoll was on the phone? You called me and said, we're very upset. Tim Powell saying that he's going to foreclose on everything. You don't recall that?
Not specifically, no.
But that would be a serious, if you're working with the IRS and he's threatening to take everything, that would be a phone call you would make to me, wouldn't it?
Yes.
And you're saying that never happened.
No, I'm saying I don't recall that.
So it could have happened.
Yes, it could have.
And Driscoll could have been on the phone too.
Yes, that could have happened.
Wow. And I'm saying it did, but you have no memory.
Yes.
The same Driscoll, whose email address is to Liberty Mutual.
Presumably.
No, we saw that.
There could be another Driscoll. You're throwing out all kinds of...
That's getting the legal documentation from the court to the Liberty Mutual address, right? So that could be two Driscolls that are working for me on my cases that are getting their stuff to Liberty Mutual? Is that possible? Is that what you're saying?
With the many hypotheticals you're throwing out, why not?
I'm not doing hypotheticals, you are. I showed you an email address. Okay, let's go back to the videos. Now, you're saying you never saw any of them, right?
I'm saying I don't recall having watched them.
Oh, so you might have watched them.
I very well may have.
And they're that unforgettable, even when they include yourself, that you would forget that you even seen them.
Was there a question?
I'm saying You're part of the corruption in the videos. I reference you. And still you don't have a recollection of seeing it or not.
I've never seen a video where you say I am part of the corruption.
But you might have seen a video.
Of all the videos you've put online, yes, I very well may have seen one or two or many.
Oh, so you're changing your testimony from not seeing it. So now you're testifying maybe one, maybe two, maybe many.
I'm saying
Is it that you forgot that you might have seen many and don't recall any of the videos?
I don't remember if I watched them or if I didn't watch them and people just described them to me.
What people? Who? I'm sorry.
Carrie, Linda, Sherry, anyone else who ever may have worked with me who had seen the videos. I don't
When did they
recall
talk to you about that? When was the last conversation about a video?
I have no idea.
A week?
More than a year, more than...
So in this last year you haven't seen any videos?
No.
No. But you saw them before?
I may have.
And you might have seen many.
We've established this. Can we carry on?
Well, it's hard for me to have you say, I saw many, but I don't recall any of it. Particularly, do you remember a text message that was threatening to murder my children on the video?
No.
Wow. Of all those people you were talking to, none of them said that they threatened to murder my children?
I've never heard any threats against your children.
Really? Do you know Ted Little?
I recall having seen his name in one of these documents, though I don't recall which one.
He was a previous attorney. He's the texter. So you don't recall anything on the video. Do you remember when we talked about the banking commission on the videos?
No.
Taxes?
No.
So watch many, but you have absolutely zero recall of what any of it was about.
I never stated I watched many of the videos. I do not recall what was on the videos.
You said one, two, or many.
I said I may have.
Oh, so then you did say it was potentially that you did. State of corruption. That's the name of the videos, right?
I believe that's the name of the website.
Right, stateofcorruption.org. What do you think it might be about?
Corruption.
Right. While you were employed for us, how many depositions did you set into?
How many depositions?
How many
did I set
depositions
into?
did you sit with?
None.
None. While you were there, do you recall us having any depositions?
In the New Hampshire cases, no.
In the mass cases?
I don't recall.
But you do recall we didn't have any in New Hampshire.
Yes.
So you have no recollection that we had any depositions.
This is correct.
And yet we had multiple lawsuits.
Yes.
Were we trying to get depositions?
I believe there were attempts made at scheduling depositions, but none were taken during my tenure.
Who was in charge of scheduling the depositions and creating that?
I believe it was either Carrie or Linda.
Linda who?
Linda Nakamura.
Right, that was her job. So all the time that you worked here, you don't know of one deposition that this company had or I had individually. Not one, right?
Correct.
Yet, do you know we've already got 2 depositions, you being the second one, and Dan gonna be the third. So we just had, today, more depositions than we've ever had while you were at the company. Isn't that so?
Yes.
If Linda's job was to schedule depositions, and we didn't have any, would you say she did her job properly?
If she was making attempts to schedule the depositions, then yes, she was doing her job properly.
If she was making attempts.
Yes.
we made an attempt to depose you now, didn't we?
Yes.
And you're here.
Yes.
So explain to me, if she was doing her job and we had multiple depositions that had to be ordered, why couldn't we get one?
Because those lawsuits were very complex and there were many, many parties. Theoretically, if all the parties couldn't get together at one time and place, you couldn't schedule a deposition.
Yeah, but that isn't the case. The lawsuits were separate. Multiple lawsuits. So, you were speaking hypothetically, now weren't you? Not by knowledge.
During my time there were many cases.
Right. And we had no depositions now, did we? Many cases, no depots. Is that true?
Yes.
So right now, we've just had more depots in any case we've ever had. You surprised to hear that?
Are you referencing the 5 months that I was employed at MSI?
I'm representing 8 years of asking for depositions and not getting any.
Well, no, because you have Friedman's deposition.
One? Right.
Yes, and so far there's been one today, so that is equal.
Not today. Before, we had one. Meaning, we have just now surpassed the total of depositions on this one case that I'm being sued by Linda. Is that too hard to figure out?
Yes, you were trying to explain that one is greater than one is too hard to figure out.
All the cases were independent. The depositions, none were made all through your time. Other than the one Friedman deposition that you got to read, but have absolutely no memory of, right? You just brought up Friedman, so you must have had a memory that we deposed Friedman.
Yes, just a few moments ago you showed me the deposition of Friedman, so yes,
Right.
I recall that.
But you have no memory of it before.
I have no recollection of what is written in the deposition. No.
But then you did have the deposition. You did look at it. You
I'm
said
not
you
following
did.
your question.
Did you look at Friedman's deposition?
I believe I've already answered that question.
Well, why don't you say yes or no?
I
Now.
believe I may have.
Well, see, you didn't say yes or no.
It
May
was
have.
It was a year and a half ago. I don't recall.
And that's a
the
long
date.
time ago for an instant that got you fired? You don't remember why you were fired for?
Not specifically, no.
Wow. Does that happen often to you that you get fired and not know the reason why?
No, but it appears to happen a lot at your company.
No, not for reasons. For good reasons. You're working for the other side. You think that's funny?
I
huh?
think that's hilarious.
Well, we'll see how. Okay, I'm good. Deposition.